Morning, everybody. Welcome. We'll get started in just another minute or so. Just a couple more people showing up, which is nice. All right, there is 10 o'clock. So we'll get started. Welcome, my name is Ian. I'm Ian Gillespie. I'm president of IGG Software. And we decided to put this webinar together after getting some feedback from some other webinars. The one we've done on envelope budgeting in particular, and the getting started one. So this, I don't want to say it piggybacks off of those, but it definitely assumes that you have some familiarity with Banktivity. Before I go too deep into the presentation and the hands-on demos, I did want to introduce Nancy Libby, who's also here, and she's our tech support manager. If you want to say hi, Nancy.
Oops, my here. Glad you're here.
Hi. Yeah, we can hear you.
Great.
So yeah, Nancy is joining us as well, but I'll be doing the presenting today. We got a question just right off the bat from Pat and wants to know if this video will be available afterwards, and yes, it will be. That being said, let me just go over the format of how this is going to work. I'm going to start sharing my screen now. Everybody should be able to see a Keynote document that's open here. Let me know if you don't see my screen, because that means we got some kind of technical issue. And I have some slides to show you. To be honest, though, they're mainly just for me as an outline to cover the tips, tricks, and best practices that I want to go over. And I really hope to spend most of the time working with a sample document in Banktivity, showing you, what some of the tips and tricks and best practices. I definitely don't cover all of them, and I'm sure that some of the ones I cover, some people will probably yawn and be like, "Oh yeah, I know about that." But hopefully there's a little bit of everything for everyone. All right, so let's get started. Like I said, this is the Tips, Tricks, and Best Practices webinar. I'm Ian, president of IGG Software. Happy to be presenting to you this morning. Get that out of there. This webinar is going to cover some kind of practical uses of the app. I'm going to weave in some sound financial practices in and out, but I am not a financial advisor, so I'm not going to go too deep into that, although I have been studying and working with personal finances for over 15 years. And also, I'm assuming that you are using Banktivity 7. This demo, I'm going to be using Banktivity 7 in my live demos. And if you are on an older version, some of the features might carry over, some of them might not. Okay, so let's launch into the very first thing. All right, and this is multiple documents, when, why, and how. Okay, I'm going to bring up Banktivity, and I have a document here. Now, for I would say, probably 90% of our customers, something like that, they will only ever use one document in Banktivity. Now, a document in Banktivity, it's really just like a document that you would have for a word processing application, like Pages, or a set of slides like in Keynote. And most people only ever see their one document. And we try and do a pretty good job so that if you leave your document open and you quit Banktivity, I just quit it, and when you relaunch it, it automatically reopens that same document. And that's kind of all you ever see. But behind the scenes, Banktivity can support any number of documents that you can have stored on your computer. And sometimes we get questions about, well, when do I want to use multiple documents and why? And I think the best example is when you want to keep a, I shouldn't say the best example, this is how you know when you should have multiple documents or not. If you want to keep a set of financials that are completely separate from your own personal or family finances. So, some examples are if you are helping a nonprofit manage their finances and you wanted to keep track of some of their accounts, you could create a separate document for that so that, let's say it's for a, some kind of a land conservation group or something like that, and they might have a checking account and some investments and maybe a credit card. You could have those accounts in Banktivity in a totally separate document that might be called something like, the land trust or whatever your group is that you work with. Another example would be is if you run a business and that business is some kind of organization like an LLC or a C Corp or even a sole proprietorship, and you've opened up a business checking account and a business credit card, and so you really want to keep those separate from your own finances. They're totally different, and so that's when you'd want to use multiple documents. Now, to create a new document, you can just go to File, New, and choose a new document, and then use these shortcuts to kind of jump into the document creation process at different starting points. All right, so that's just a couple of thoughts on new documents. Great, there's some more people that have showed up. I just want to mention one thing also about this presentation, and that is I am going to have time for questions and answers at the end. So if you have questions, please save them to the end. That way, I won't get interrupted and end up going on tangents trying to answer them and that sort of thing. So if you have questions, that's great. Keep them for the end, and I love to try and do the best I can answering them. All right, so that was multiple documents. Now let's talk about organizing accounts. So I'm going back to my Banktivity document here. Now this is this document is maybe not that realistic. I do have a few account types that are people might recognize. I have a checking account, I have an investment, I have a savings, I have an asset with a negative balance, I have some real estate. I'll make this a little bigger so we can see it, and I got a mortgage for that house. Now, some people might only have a small number of accounts like that. This is 5. This is not that many. Other people might have 20, 30, 40, 50. The longer you use Banktivity, it seems that we kind of go through this process of like, oh, I'm going to open up this new credit card and close out this other one. And so more accounts come into existence. If you have lots of accounts, there's a great way that you can organize them over here, and that is within groups. Now, to make a group, you select the accounts that you want into that group. So let's say I want my checking and savings into it. So I hold down the Command key and I can select or deselect each one I want. And then I'm going to Control click, which is what if you have a 2-button mouse or something, that would be a right click. And I'm going to choose New Group with selected items. And you'll see that these 2 accounts now show up under this group called Untitled Group. And I can put in here and just say that these are my everyday accounts or whatever name you want, and hit save. And now we have these accounts in this group. And now you'll notice that the group here shows the total amount of all the accounts that are in there. And you can drag accounts in and out as much as you want, and you can create multiple groups. You can even organize groups within groups if that's what you want to do. I commonly see people group sort of their accounts that they use all the time, like their checking account, maybe some credit cards, into one group. And then often there's one that is more for retirement, and that's where they're putting in all their retirement. you can create groups for whatever makes sense for you. So that's account groups. Great way to keep all this information in the sidebar here organized. And of course, if you're using Banktivity on multiple Macs, those will sync using our Cloud Sync too. All right, let's see what, oh yeah, one other thing about organizing accounts. So that was groups. I also want to talk about a new feature that's in 7, and that is linking of real estate and mortgages. And so you can see here I have this account that represents a home that I own, let's say, and we have here a mortgage. Now, in this case, this mortgage isn't. I'm gonna adjust it, make it a little more accurate. Let's say I owe $201,000 on the account. There we go. That looks a little better. So now we have a house that's worth about $300,000, and we have a loan for about $200,000. Now, new in 7 is you can link these two accounts so that you tell Banktivity, hey, for this property I have, this is the loan associated with it. And when you're setting up a new account, it asks you about linking and stuff. But if you already have your accounts and they aren't linked, you can link them by just dragging and dropping them. So I'm gonna pick up the mortgage and drop it onto the real estate account. And now you can see it appears what us developers refer to as a child, and that it's just, it's inset from this parent account. And now what's cool is when you click on the real estate account, it shows you your property value, the balance of your mortgage, and then it calculates the equity for you. And also, if you collapse this, it shows you your net equity. And so that's just another cool way to keep your accounts organized, is that you can link your mortgages, or if you have a home equity line of credit, with the property that they're associated with. All right, moving on. Okay, how to just see the important info. Okay, so this has to do, we've kind of talked about documents, we've talked about accounts, and now we're going to talk more about specific transactions and really the transaction register. Now, a typical account could have a lot of transactions coming in every day. A lot of people are using their credit cards to pay for more and more things, and so it's not uncommon to have, 5 new transactions in a day, or 10 new transactions over the course of the week. Sometimes you might manually enter a transaction. Let's say if you write a check and you want to capture that, so you enter that check as a new transaction in Banktivity like I did here. The problem is, as this register starts to get long, some transactions can kind of get lost in the noise. You could have a list, this transaction list could be, years and years, have years and years and years of transactions. And sometimes it's nice to know, well, wait a minute, that one check that I wrote a month ago, did that ever get cashed? Did that ever, or I want to see just kind of like my new transactions. And so we've created this feature that actually allows you to see what we consider kind of the most important information. And it basically groups your new transactions and your uncleared transactions together. Now, I don't have any new transactions in this account, so I'm going to change that real quick. I got a real simple file here. I'm going to import it into my checking so that I get a new transaction. Okay, yeah, great. So I got a new transaction here. And you can imagine that if you hadn't updated this account in a couple of days or even a week, there might be lots and lots of transactions. So to group just the important info, the new transactions and the uncleared transactions, you go up here to the Transactions tab button, you click this little arrow and you choose Group New and Uncleared Transactions. And now Banktivity will pull to the top any transaction that is uncleared. So you can see there's a circle here instead of a check. That means this transaction is not cleared. And then any transactions that are badged with new or match and that sort of thing. And so this is a great way to just kind of see, I need to see, the important stuff. And to me, the important stuff is, okay, I still have this check that hasn't been cashed yet, and there's this transaction here from a long time ago. Sorry, this transaction badged is new that, okay, I want to categorize it. This isn't categorized yet. And so this is a great way to just kind of see all your transactions that you might need to take action on front and center. Now I'm going to ungroup them with a shortcut, Command-Shift-G, and I'm just going to show you other very handy filter, especially when it's coming, we're getting on tax season now, is you can just see all of your uncategorized transactions. And so here we apply a filter. In this case, I have 3 uncategorized transactions, and you'll notice that we get a little message up here that says show only uncategorized. And so you could take action on these transactions by categorizing them if you wanted to. I'm going to go back to showing all and just click this X button here and go back to showing all. So that's kind of what I consider showing just the important information. Now, for the demo that's coming up, I'm actually going to change the date of this transaction so that the demo goes a little better. Change that to the 2nd of January. All right, and I'm going to delete this transaction that I imported because I'm going to need to change things up for the next demo. And I'm just going to jump back over to the slides here. Okay. Now, this is what I call the story of writing checks. Even though I spend, I put more and more things on a credit card, I still write checks from time to time. I assume that some of you are in the same boat, and this is what the process usually looks like. You create a transaction, and so in this case, I have one here that's called I paid somebody, and it's a check. I'm going to double click it, show the editor. It's a check. The check number is 1012. I gave it a category of rent and the amount of $25.61. What a deal. Such cheap rent. And I'm going to hit save. Now, the problem is sometimes when you give that check to somebody, they don't go out and immediately cash it. And so it's really important that you capture it in Banktivity so that you have an accurate you have an accurate balance of that account in Banktivity. But what often happens is that person doesn't cash it right away. And when they do finally cash it and you bring in that new transaction into Banktivity, whether you've connected up the account automatically through direct access or you import a file, whatever it is, at some point it's going to show up. And because it is imported so much later than the original date that you wrote the check, Banktivity doesn't match them up. So I'm going to show you what this kind of looks like. I'm going to import this file again. Whoop. And okay, so in this case, I'm going to group by new and uncleared, Command-Shift-G. And you can see here I paid somebody rent, $25.61. And then I realized, oh, here it is that it cashed. Here's that someone finally cashed that check for $25.61. But so now I have that transaction in there 2 times essentially, and we don't want that. So this is the best way to resolve it. You can merge 2 transactions together. And what you do is you want to click and drag the transaction that you want to merge into your existing one. So in this case, I want this original one that I wrote that has the correct check number in it. It has the category, has a goofy payee, but don't worry about that. And then I want to merge this transaction into it. So I click it and I drag it and I drop it on there. And it says, hey, do you want to merge these? Basically the one that says FedEx 31 Main Street is going to be deleted, but the other one's going to, not be. And I say that's fine. I merge, and now boom. We've merged that transaction with this one, and now we can mark it cleared because we know it's cleared at the bank. And now you know that check that you wrote to that person has been cashed, and your account balances are accurate. And everything is good in life and you can continue on. So that's a common workflow with writing checks that we get questions about of kind of how's the right way to handle that. Now, someday I hope that we can make Banktivity better and do a better job of, being a little bit smarter about when to match and when to not match. But it's, it's not good to get it wrong either and start matching people's transactions that don't match. So with the case of writing checks, it can happen quite a bit. And this is the right way to merge those transactions together and go on. Jump back to the slides. Okay. This next section I call, what's this transaction? Every once in a while, you're going to be using Banktivity, and there's going to be some new transactions that you import or you download from your bank, and you're going to look at it and be like, what is this? I don't recognize this payee. I know it happens to me with a gas station that's nearby. I believe it's a Chevron, but it always comes through as Truax or something that, comes through as something I don't recognize regularly, or at least it did originally. And so I'm going to show you a way to kind of help you better understand the transactions that are coming in and try and get to the bottom of what was this. Because here's the other case. You import a transaction and Banktivity uses one of the import rules because it's a transaction that it recognizes, and it changes the payee, it cleans it up, and it assigns a category. And you look at it and you're thinking, like, wait, where did this come from? Like, now it's saying, that I shopped at Target and bought some groceries, but I don't remember doing that. Well, I'm going to show you how you can see the original information that Banktivity imported before an import rule was applied and things got cleared up. So what you do, in this case, let's say I'm interested in this transaction that says, wait a minute, this one is just called I paid someone and it's rent and it's a check number 1012. What was this for? Why is it? What does the original information look like? So I double click it and you'll notice that there's a little I here. And now that little I will only appear if it's a transaction that you have imported through a file or downloaded from your bank using direct access or direct connect or something like that. But if you click this little I, you get a popover and it shows you, hey, this came in from a QIF, and this is what the original information looked like. In this case, it just had a payee, and this is what it looked like. So that's how you can see what the original import info was like on a transaction. Going to move on again. Okay. I need to change a lot of transactions. Sometimes when you're using Banktivity, you might decide that you want to change a lot of transactions. So I'm going to open up a file here. See if I can pull this up. No, I'm going to skip that. All right, I'm going to keep working with my existing file. Yeah, I'll keep working with my existing file. Sometimes you want to change a lot of transactions. Whether it be you want to change a whole bunch of categories all at once. Or I know which file. I'll just open this one here. You want to change a lot of categories all at once. You might want to change the transaction type all at once. You might want to change the payee many times. And so I'm going to show you how you can do those. If you want to change the category all at once, you select the transactions you want. In this case, I have one that's traders, that's groceries, and I have one that's rent. You could select all of them if you wanted, whatever you want to do. And then you control click and you get this great way to do these batch changes. Here you can change the category. You can change the transaction type. If it was a security transaction, you could change the security. And you can add tags if you wanted to a bunch of transactions. You can mark a whole bunch as cleared or uncleared. Now I'm going to show you if you want to change. So I'll just change this category. So I'm going to change the category to, let's say, charitable donations. Boom, changes to charitable donations. So I just batch change, in this case, 2 transactions. It could be 2, it could be 200. Now I'm going to change the payee. This interface is a little different, so I want to show it. I choose change payee, and it says, hey, we've selected 2 different transactions. What do you want the new payee to be? And I'm going to say, I want this to be Trader Joe's, let's say. And I'm going to hit change payee, and then boom, the payee changes for those. So that's a way to batch change transactions for when you want to do a lot of cleanup, or for whatever reason, we see that it happens with people. They want to do that, and so that's how it's done. All right. Okay. What to do when your balances are off? It is a sad truth that no matter what personal finance app you're using, if you use it long enough, at some point, you're going to look at your balance here for one of your accounts, and then you're going to log on to your bank's website or use their mobile app or something, and you're going to say, huh, these don't match up. And it's not going to be exactly clear as to why that is. And maybe if you haven't updated your account in a long time, they might have gotten off a long time ago. And it can be really hard to find how they got off. So first I want to say the best way to prevent this and to catch it while it's happening is to regularly reconcile your accounts. And so over here in statements, you can create a new statement, and this represents a statement that you receive online or receive in the mail, and you match up every single transaction in Banktivity with the exact transactions that the bank knows about. And that's the best way to make sure you don't get off. But you know what? Sometimes maybe you're setting up an account and you deleted a bunch of transactions that were in the past, or you know what? It's only off by a little bit. I don't want to spend that much time, or you know what? I don't reconcile. I don't have the time. Whatever it is, there's a way to just make the account have the right balance without throwing off all your reports. Now, I say use this with caution, because if your balance is off, it's better to find out why. Right? Maybe the bank is wrong. You'd want to know about that. That happens. But if you just say, you know what, I need my balance to be this, you can go up here to account and choose adjust balance. And it tells you what the current balance is. And then you can say, hey, you know what, I want the balance to be just I know it's $2,000.03 today. And hit adjust balance. And it'll put in this special transaction called an adjustment. And you can see that it's badged with an ADJ. And in this case, it was a deposit of $512.09 to bring our balance to the right amount. And this transaction will be ignored in reports. So if you run a report, it's not going to look like you got an extra $512 in income. And that's kind of what this special adjustment badge does. It behind the scenes, it says, hey, you know what, when you're running reports, ignore me. Now, if you're running if you're showing like a balance sheet or something like that, then of course it is incorporated because it affects the balance of your account. But when you're looking at cash flow in and out, it gets ignored. So that is the adjust balance feature. Use it with caution. Okay. Thoughts on categories. Sometimes when I'm working with a customer, I see that they have a lot of categories. And sometimes when I'm giving my other webinar, the envelope budgeting one, sometimes I get questions about, well, how many categories should I have? So let me just show you what the categories, the default set looks like. I'm going to go here to settings and go to categories, and you can see that these are all the default categories that Banktivity comes with. Now, we thought quite a bit about these, and we tried to capture really kind of, everything that you might have as an expense. But of course, we're not going to be able to capture everything. Everybody has different expenses and income, and they have different thoughts about how they want that organized. And Banktivity lets you create as many categories as you want. And you can create subcategories and nest your categories to as many levels as you want. When I'm giving my envelope budgeting webinar, though, and people ask me about how many categories, I encourage people to keep it simple. And let's say I have a category here of clothing, shoes, and I go out and I need to buy my kid some new pants. And so I go to the kids store and I buy $50 of new pants. All of a sudden it occurs to me like, well, wait a minute, is this clothing or is this some kind of kid expense? Now, in this case, we have a clothing category. I would say use clothing. In the end, at the end of the year or later that month, when you're looking at how much money you spent, do you need to know how much you spent just on kid clothes, or you just want to know the whole picture of how much am I spending on clothes for the whole family? So I encourage people that when in doubt, keep it simple. It just it makes things easier a lot of times in the long run. That being said, with my own personal finances, yeah, I don't have the exact default set here at all. I have changed them and customized them to what I feel like makes sense for our household, but I still I always think twice before creating a new category. And the other thing I want to show you is don't be afraid to combine categories. And so let's say that, you know what, we don't really have an electronics category. It's just entertainment. When I buy my new PlayStation 10 or whatever is out, that's just entertainment. You can combine categories. So you select the two categories you want to combine. Again, you hold down the control button. Whoops. Sorry. Select the two categories. You don't hold down the control button. You go up here to merge. And Banktivity will just merge these two categories into a new one. In this case, I'm going to call it, I'll just leave it as entertainment, I guess. Doesn't have a parent. That means it doesn't, it's not a subcategory. And just hit apply. Oh yeah, it doesn't like that category name because it exists. I'll call it fun stuff. Apply. Merge them. And now we're just left with one category called fun stuff. And so, sometimes I realize if I have not heeded my own advice and I end up with too many categories, you can merge them together, which is a cool thing. Okay, we're moving on to our last item, and this is Workspaces. My guess is that some of you probably know about Workspaces, but for those who don't, I want to show it to you because it's a pretty, I'd call it a power/productivity feature. I'm going to make this window a little bit bigger. Okay, and the way Workspaces work is you can basically put two sets of information right next to each other in Banktivity. So normally, when people use Banktivity, they click something over here in the sidebar and they get the information of whatever they clicked here. Sometimes you want to have two sets of information together. So in Banktivity, you can divide up this workspace here into multiple sections. And so, for example, I'm going to just click and drag my budget, slide it in right here. And now all of a sudden, I'm looking at my budget and I'm looking at my checking account transactions. So I can work in this space as much as I want. And I can also go over here and work in this space and edit my budget if I want to. Now, you'll notice there's a blue line up here. That blue line indicates that this is the active workspace. It's if I choose any commands up here that are going to affect one of these workspaces, it's going to affect the one that has the blue line. So if I click over here, this one now has the focus and will receive actions from up here. Like if I add a new transaction, it's going to show in right here. Let me jump over, and also if you click a new item in the sidebar, it indicates where it's going to go. So in this case, if I click on summary, it's going to pop over here in the right one. I actually want it to pop over here in my budget, so I'm going to click summary. And now you can see I'm looking at my summary and I'm looking at this checking account. Now I'll show you kind of another power features. If you want to drill down and see some more information, like, hey, I want to take a look at what changes my net worth had in January. If you hold down the Option key and click on here, it keeps this workspace where it is and sticks the drill down information over into the next workspace. And so now you can navigate independently over here. I'll show that again. Let's say I'll go to a report. I don't know what we're going to find, but yeah, okay. So here's a report, and let's say I want to say, hey, what's going on with this these uncategorized expenses? Now I want to keep this workspace around, the one that has my report in it, but I do want to find out about these uncategorized expenses. So I'm going to hold the Option key and click, and it sticks it. Oh yeah, I have one $10 transfer to my mortgage where I paid a little bit more, and that's uncategorized. You know, I can take care of that now. So those are workspaces. To close the workspace, you click the X button, and it goes away. You can, depending on how big your screen is, you can have up to 3 workspaces. Possibly you can even have 4 if you have a really, really, really big screen. But great way to be able to get 2 sets of information side by side. Anything that appears in the sidebar over here, you can put into a workspace. So if you have some of your bank websites here, you can load up your bank's website in one view and have your account register in another workspace. So let's just say that this bank's website is I don't know, Wells Fargo. So down here now we have this Wells Fargo website. We can drop it in here. And so you can, I could log into Wells Fargo right here. Maybe if I needed to check on a transaction or do some little research or something. And I can also look at the exact transactions that I have in my Wells Fargo account right here. So that's Workspaces. All right. So that is it. Those are my tips, tricks, and best practices. At least take one. This is the first time we've done the webinar, and so hopefully I found a good kind of hit the sweet spot of something for everyone, and hopefully there's a little bit of something everybody can take away. All right, so just going to hide this, and I wanted to open up to questions. Okay. William Davidson. Credit. This is a great question. So he's saying credit card downloads not cleared. Then a couple of days later, it clears, and now I have 2 of the same with different dates, but the merge doesn't work. Or do you merge or delete one? Okay, so let me explain to you what is happening. This will happen when you're using direct access, and that sometimes your bank shows you your pending transactions. And so this happens like if you go out to dinner and you spend $100, it'll show up, it might show up in Banktivity later that night as pending $100 at some restaurant. But you added a tip, let's say for $20. And a few days later, a transaction comes down that says the restaurant name, but instead of $100, it says $120. Now, our back-end provider for direct access is sending us down 2 transactions, which is fine. It's sending us down the pending one, and then it's sending us down, a few days later, the real one. We will delete that pending one when it disappears from your website. And so you can just kind of, let it be there. They might overlap briefly, but it will just disappear. The other thing you can do is once the real one comes down, the one for 120 that is cleared, is you could then delete the pending one. You are right that you can't merge the 2. Or if you don't want to deal with pending transactions because they are, they're a little funky, you can go to Banktivity Preferences, and I believe it's under Import. You can uncheck or check this include pending transactions on import. And then you won't get any of them. But yeah, what I personally do is I leave pending transactions on, and I just I wait, it's usually a couple hours at most, and eventually that pending one just will disappear the next time you do a refresh when it realizes, oh, it's not there anymore. This is gone. All right. Hopefully that's helpful, William. Wendy asks, first of all, thank you for developing a Mac-friendly program for finances to replace the terrible new Quicken. What are the advantages to including all of your accounts, such as credit cards, mortgages, investments, rather than just keeping it simple and tracking only checking and savings? Okay, so I would call this a, let's take this example. Let's say that you want to get fit for the year. And so you hire a personal trainer. The personal trainer says, hey, I want you for the first week, or maybe it's every week we meet, I want you to bring me a list of all the food you ate. And that way we can help you, improve your diet and kind of set up the right exercise regime and that sort of thing. And so you go home and you eat for a week, and when you go back, you decide, well, I'm not going to show them that I've been drinking beer at night, and in the morning I've been eating marshmallows, and then pizza, and then after dinner I always have ice cream. I'm just going to show them all the other food. That personal trainer wouldn't be able to make the best recommendations if they didn't really know all that information. And so it's kind of similar with finances. You can't get a whole picture of your financial well-being if you aren't really tracking everything. Now, if you had to not track one thing, I would say, track the things that have the least impact on, like, whether or not you can afford to go out to dinner or something like that. So maybe you don't want to track your investments, and maybe you don't want to track your mortgage. But I think the more you track, I think the better. But definitely checking savings and credit cards are very important to see, where you're spending your money and how much credit card balance you're carrying month to month and that sort of thing. Christoph, you're welcome. So hopefully that was helpful, Nancy. And I'm going on to the next question, Susan. To keep track of but not merge my own finances, but to track my mom's, do I create a separate document? And if I pay for something for her and want to reimburse myself, how do I do it? In life, I move the money from her account to mine, but in Banktivity? Okay, this is a great idea. This is a great question. If I were tracking the accounts for somebody else in my family, I would use a separate document, absolutely. And so let's say your mom just has, 2 accounts, a checking and savings, and let's say your file has, it doesn't really matter. Let's say it has 10 accounts. You have those in 2 separate files. And then when your mom, let's say she's got I'll take your reimbursement example. Let's say you go shopping for your mom and you buy $100 worth of groceries. You would enter that. I'll just do it real quick here. Let's say you use your debit card, so it shows up in your checking account. Sorry, I'll leave that. I'm going to create a new transaction. And let's say we went to Kroger's or something, and it's groceries, and it's $100. Now your mom gives you $100 to pay you back, and so you deposit that into your checking account. Since there are 2 separate documents, you can't do a transfer between the documents. You can only do transfers between accounts that are in the same document. So what you'd want to do then is you'd actually create a deposit for the money you got from your mom. You might say this is from mom. And then what I would do is put the category as groceries because you're getting reimbursed for this. The income is 100, and you could say mom paid me back and hit save. And now if you were to run a report on groceries, these 2 would cancel each other out, which is what's really going on in real life. So that's how I would do that. Aline, Aline's saying my sound is going in and out. I don't see anybody else mentioning poor audio quality. Can somebody just give me a post something in the questions if you can hear me okay? Audio is good. Okay, I'm going to keep moving on. I'm sorry, Aline, that it's not good. It looks like most people have good quality. Um, I'll try and talk clearer and slower maybe. Okay, Pat. Okay, Pat says the delete function to get rid of a transaction seems different in 7. Can you explain how to do that? Sure. To delete a transaction, you select the one you want so that it's blue, and then you hit the delete key. I believe that is the only way to delete a transaction. Delete key, and you'll always get this confirmation, and then you just hit cancel or delete. And by default, we purposely made you can't just hit return here and select a default value. You have to click on one of those, and that's because it's easy to just, whenever you see a message like that, to hit return to make it go away. But in this case, it would be, deleting a transaction. So we make it a little harder. All right, Phil. I was an iBank 5 user and I moved to Quicken Deluxe. With the release of 7, he's considering moving back. I did the export from Quicken and then imported to Banktivity. All my investment accounts show up, there are no transactions. Credit cards accounts look correct. Why does this happen? This is going to be a question that's going to be better for tech support, Phil. My guess is that Quicken Deluxe for Mac is not exporting investment accounts, all the transactions in there. I do know that if you have a Quicken file, format file, or a QIF file that has investment transactions, we definitely import it. So my guess is that it's not getting exported. If you go to our live chat, though, they should be able to help you more. I don't want to dig. I don't want to try and troubleshoot that through the webinar, but we can import those data if they're there. Okay, Susan, I have several checking accounts at different banks. So would it make sense to group things by bank institution rather than just separately labeling them checking accounts? Or should I group all the checking account under a group named checking? This really comes down to personal preference. I tend to not group my accounts based on financial institution. That's not so important to me. I group my accounts based on use. So I forget what the name of my group is, but I think it's called Everyday, or maybe it's called my liquid accounts or something like that. But it's basically all the accounts that I use day in and day out. And then I have another group that I call inaccessible savings, and in there I have I have an Ally savings account, and I have it there because it's money I don't really want to touch, and I call it inaccessible because if you want to get money out of those accounts, it just takes several days, and so I can't give you. I personally prefer to group them by their function in my household finances as opposed to financial institution. But we created this flexibility because we know everybody feels is different, and if for you it makes sense to group them by financial institution, if you have a lot and that's going to help you, definitely do that. There's nothing wrong with that approach. Okay, Paul. I have 2 months transactions direct access from 10 accounts. One of the account balance starts off plus $10.08. Then several weeks later is low by $489.92, then high by $8,694. Then as of yesterday is high by 1008. They are all checking accounts and savings plus 3 loans. How to best identify the source of errors and fix? Okay. The best way to track this down really is by reconciling your accounts. If I'm trying to find a one-off error, this is what I do. I log into my bank's website and I find somewhere where they tell me what my balance is on a certain date. Some banks keep a running balance by date. Sometimes you have to go back to a statement. And so I'll go back to, I'll go back until I can find some place where it says on this date, your balance should have been $300, let's say. And then I go into Banktivity and I look, okay, on this date, was my balance 300? And then I basically, if it was, then I know, okay, then the error has happened since then. And I kind of go through time again. It's not quick, but that's one way to do it. I think the other thing to do is really to go back and start reconciling your accounts on a monthly basis based on your bank statements. That would be my advice. Carol, just wondering if it's going to be available as a recording. Yeah, it'll go out as a recording a little bit later today, Carol. And then Wendy, also wondering about the recording, and yep, it'll come back out. It'll come out later today. You'll be automatically emailed with a link to watch it. Paul says this is Paul who asked the question about the balance being off. Okay, here's the other thing to keep. Paul, you mentioned that it's a credit union. So direct access, it works really well, especially for the big banks. Wells Fargo, Chase, throw out any other big bank name there, and it works really well. I personally use a local credit union for some banking. And I have found that sometimes direct access has errors. And I have a savings account that every once in a while gets a little bit of interest in it, and that will sometimes show up in the wrong account. And when that happens, we file a bug with our direct access provider and say, hey, guys need to fix this. This is showing up in the wrong account. It's possible that something could be happening like that, Paul. That account and a transaction is showing up in the wrong account, and it shouldn't be, something like that. Okay, I'm going to move along. Okay. Susan is asking about, I believe Susan's the one who keeping her mom's finances separate. And she says, I move things electronically between our accounts at the same bank, Chase. That you can still do it as separate files, and that would be fine. So what would happen is I'm going to delete this. When you transfer money from your Chase account, let's say this is a Chase account here, to your mom's, or I should say, let's say you go out and spend some money on groceries, $100, and then your mom is going to transfer you some money. You'd still put it as a deposit, and you could still put from mom, and you would still leave it as groceries and income 100. And then when the actual transfer occurs and you get that money coming into your account, Banktivity will see this and it'll match it up. And if it doesn't, you can use the trick I showed you about merging the two. But the fact that the fact that you're doing the transfer online, it should still work out fine. Now, I don't know what the details of your relationship with your mom. You can keep your account in with yours if that's easier for you. If your mom says, hey, what's my net worth? It's going to be harder for you to answer that, because when you go up here and look at the summary, when we show your net worth here, it's going to be tangled in with your account, and it's just not going to be as clean to be able to answer a question like that. Okay, moving on to Anne. She's on the trial period. She's struggling with setting the budget. Direct access is working well. How do I add pension income, which arrives every fourth Friday? So scheduled transactions is the tool you use for when you need to tell Banktivity about money that comes in regularly. Right now, you can only tell Banktivity about transactions that occur around a calendar unit interval. So, for example, you could tell Banktivity that you have a deposit every week, or every 2 weeks, or once a month, or once a year. You currently don't have a way to say the fourth Friday. I would probably, set it up monthly, and then just when you post that transaction, set the date correctly. I don't have a perfect solution for you. You can definitely come to our, and I would encourage you to. I'd really like to, to get Banktivity to work for you. I'm also just want to be honest about, what features it has and doesn't have. But if you come to our live chat, they're open 9 to 5 Eastern time and on the weekdays, and 10 to 4 Eastern on the weekends. They can, help dig into that more and explain. And if you have more questions here, I'm happy to help. All right. Sometimes I record a transaction in the wrong account. How can I easily move it to the correct account? The best way is through cut and paste. So let's say that this one I put into the wrong account that says from Mom Groceries. You can go up here and choose cut, and it's going to delete it. And then let's say I want that in savings. I can go here to paste, and puts it in right there. That's probably the easiest way. Pat, when I make a transfer from a business checking to a personal checking to pay myself, how can I track this as paychecks wages? Do I need to create a journal entry account to handle this situation? Otherwise, it doesn't show up properly in my income expense report. Okay, so this, you have your business checking account in the same file as your personal checking account. This sounds like a perfect candidate for using separate documents, like I talked about early on, but I will answer your question for if there's reasons that you do want to keep them together. I would not create a journal entry. I would just do it as a transfer from business checking to your personal checking. And then when you create reports, you want to exclude the business checking account from the report. And when you do that, it will look at your data and say, hey, this doesn't look like a transfer because not both of the accounts are included. So this is just income coming in. And then it'll show as income coming in from your business account. Okay, Wendy, Bank of America tells me they do not offer direct access. Yes. They've never heard of Banktivity, encouraged me to go back to Quicken. They asked about QFX, Direct Connect, and they're unfamiliar, said it was up to you to make it work. Yes, so most of the big banks have not heard about us or do not know about us. Some of them do. We have conversations every once in a while with some of them. What I would do, I do believe that Direct Connect with Bank of America is not supported. And so what you want to do is when you set up your account, I'll just show you here. I'll click Add Account. And this is first option, it's at a bank. I'm going to hit Next. You just want to type in Bank of America and select this here, and then go through the process of setting up the account. And this next screen says, hey, do you want to use direct access? I wouldn't try and do the direct download. My understanding is I think some people are grandfathered in, so we still have that here, but I don't know for sure if that's working or not. Direct access is always easier, of course. It does cost money. I'm just in full disclosure. And the reason why we charge money is our back-end provider charges us, and we can't, it's just, it's not a cost we can swallow right now. And I want my budget to work per calendar month. When income is different dates, how do I choose which month I want to spend it? So I recommend doing an envelope budget, Anne, and we have a webinar later on this week that Nancy will be doing just on envelope budgeting. I strongly encourage you to go to that. But what happens is, the great thing about envelope budgeting is when you get paid and you have this money, you decide how you want to spend that money by distributing it into these envelopes. And the envelopes represent different categories. And so it's like you're earmarking that money. And so you say, okay, well, I'm going to earmark $200 towards groceries. And I'm going to earmark, $100 towards my car insurance. When the next month comes around, all the money that was in those envelopes just rolls over. And so it's super flexible, and then it works, if you're a freelancer and you get paid on really erratic schedules, it still works for that. Or if you're on a fixed income, it works for that as well. And so with envelope budgeting, you work with the money you have now, and then you spend it when you spend it, but whatever you don't spend just keeps rolling over. I don't want to dig into it too much here, but I would definitely recommend I'd recommend for you to consider envelope budgeting. Aline's asking about transferring data from Pocket Money. I don't know if Pocket Money, what kind of export options they have. I haven't looked at Pocket Money in a long time. If they do a QIF, that would be the easiest way. If they do a CSV, you could also import on a per account basis. I think the best way to get help though would probably go to our live chat, and they could probably, they can help walk you through some of the steps. So I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, Aline. I would recommend you go to our live chat, and they should be able to help you out. I should also say too, we offer personalized one-on-one sessions with screen sharing capabilities and audio. We have free live chat with some screen sharing capabilities, but no voice. Everything is chat, and that's free. Use it as much as you want. And then if you want really like one-on-one help, you can buy those from our store on our website as well. All right, Paul is, it sounds like you're making progress, Paul. Great. It's good. I got a lot of questions. I'm just going through in the order that they come through here. Okay, this is from Johan. How can I reflect an overdraft in my checking account so I can see when I dip into my overdraft? Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if I completely understand the question, but you can post transactions that haven't occurred yet, ones that are going to occur in the future. So let's say I'm going to go to my checking account here, and let's say I know I'm paying the AT&T bill on March 1st. And let's give it utilities, and let's say it's going to be $200. It'll calculate what your balance is there, even though this is out in the future. Yeah, so and then there's also, you can run a forecast report. I guess that would be the other good way to do it. And if you did a forecast report just for one account, it will show you what your account balance is going to do in the future based on the existing transactions and then any scheduled transactions. Paul, that sounds like a good plan. He's just saying how to find that $10.08 error. That seems like a reasonable plan. All right, Susan is talking again about whether or not to have her accounts that she manages for her mom mixed with hers, and she's saying that if we keep them together, when I run a report, I can just exclude her accounts. Yep, absolutely. That's a very, very doable thing. Okay, Paul wants to know about recurring expenses and putting them into the calendar to project cash flow. Okay, so let me just show everyone how to set up a scheduled transaction. There's kind of two ways. If you set up a budget, the budget, what we call the budget assistant, click on budget, hit edit. This budget assistant walks you through some screens where it asks about your income and expenses, where you can set up scheduled transactions. Whoops. But let me show you how to do it another way in case you haven't set up a budget yet, or you have set up a budget but you realize there's some other transactions you want to add. I believe. Okay, so let's say here's a good example. I have this AT&T bill. And you know what? I want this to be a scheduled transaction. I know this happens every month. You can go up here to transaction and say make scheduled transaction from selection. And it'll go in here and drop down this bill setup sheet where you can choose when it starts, what the repeat frequency is, what category you want, which account it gets posted to, and that sort of thing. And then I'm going to hit done, and then I'm going to go under here to settings. I'm going to go to payees, schedules, and rules, and you'll see here that we have I have scheduled transactions selected here, and you can see that here's that transaction we just created for utilities. If you need to take action on this transaction, like you want to post it or something like that, you can click this button here, and this will show you all of your upcoming scheduled transactions, where you can print off a check, you can pay online if you have the right account, post it, or you could just say skip it, and that'll skip this date's iteration and then show you, and then move on to the next one. If you then go to calendar, these will just automatically show up in calendar. You can see, here's that. Here's the AT&T one I just posted. But if we go forward in time, you can see there's a little clock next to this one here saying, hey, here's the AT&T transaction you have scheduled. Here's the next one for April, and so on. You're welcome, William. I'm sorry to hear that Huntington Bank is awful with direct access, Pat. Yes, I think the industry is going through a process right now where they're trying to find the right level of security, but also realizing that people want to access their data without always having to go to the bank's website. All right, Eileen, yeah, I would use QIF. Pat saying if he signs up for the envelope budgeting webinar but he can't attend, will he get a video link? Yes, I believe you will get a link if you are absent. You can also go to our YouTube channel and search for Banktivity envelope budgeting on YouTube, and we have some of our past envelope budgeting webinars up there too if you want to get right at it. Susan, you're welcome. Wendy says, since I can't connect to my bank and have to enter everything manually, when I schedule transactions, how can I set it up automatically input certain bills that are auto deducted from my account for the same amount each month? So what you'd want to do is go here. What you want to do, Wendy, is set up a scheduled transaction. This would be for something that is a regular recurring bill. You go to settings, payee, schedules, and rules, and you can click the plus button, and you'll get this scheduled transaction setup sheet. Again, you can put in the amount, you can give it a category, you can give it a payee, and you can say when it's going to happen. Now, I'm going to discard those. Banktivity won't automatically insert that into your checking account. There's one step that you need to do manually, and that is when one of your transactions is coming up, you'll get a badge here saying, hey, you have a new scheduled transaction coming up. you can click this, and from here you can choose post, and that'll take the transaction, move it from kind of the scheduled state, and actually post it to the account that it's going to be posted to. In this case, it's going into my checking account, or it's money coming out of my checking account, but it's going to post to the checking account. Costco check printing service can't figure out what format matches Banktivity. How do I help them? I don't know about the Costco check printing service. I do know, Paul, for each account that you can write checks from, you can configure the check printing format. And so here you can drag around. You can choose what style check you have, whether it's standard, wallet, voucher. And then once you choose one of these styles, let's say it's wallet, you can move these around and tweak them so that they're accurate. But we're actually making some improvements to this. But I'm not familiar with the Costco check printing service. Carol, with scheduled transactions, if you pay online, will these use the direct access to move this from your checking account to pay the payee? Will it show like a bill paid to the payee? Yeah, so I mean, a good way to think about Banktivity is you want the activity in Banktivity. That's a mouthful. You want all of the transactions and account in Banktivity to essentially represent all the activity that happens with your like real bank accounts. And so what direct access does is it just pulls transactions down from the bank. It sees that, oh, there's a new one, it's this payee and this amount. And in some ways it's not very smart. It just gets the payee and the amount and sometimes a category and puts it in Banktivity. Banktivity, though, gets smarter and it recognizes like, oh, we've seen this transaction before. And we know that you want it to be this category, and we know that we want the payee to be cleaned up. And so if you just leave your account connected with direct access and you don't manually enter in a single transaction into Banktivity, it will always just be pulling down transactions to reflect what's going on. And that's a fine way to use the app. A lot of people do that. I would just encourage you to, categorize your transactions as they come down, and change the payee to reflect something that makes sense to you. Because sometimes, like if you use your bank's website, their bill pay through their website, and you pay somebody at an address, it might just say bill pay Bob 300. And you might want to change that to say, well, I don't want it to say bill pay Bob. I want it to say, Bob Weir or whatever the name is that it's going to. Deeper support for Europe. This is from CR. It depends a lot on our what our direct access provider does. We can certainly lean on them. But I don't have any plans that I can speak to at this webinar right now. Wendy, you're welcome. Pat, he says, thank you. He's been using it for many years. Needs to switch to 7 from 5. Yes, please upgrade. We love people staying with the more recent version. Helps in many, many ways. But you're very welcome. Great. I'm glad you found it useful. Paul McQuillan. Oh, he says, you can get a Harlan check printer sold through Costco. Interesting. Okay. Does it print one check at a time, Paul? Is it like a little tiny printer and it just spits out one check, or do you feed it like full 8.5 by 11 size sheets of paper and it prints out many? It's one check at a time. I guess Yeah, this is tricky. I don't even think we knew that that existed. I'm trying to think if you could use this voucher one. Yeah, I would have to. I don't know the answer to how to use that offhand. We definitely did not optimize Banktivity for printing out on a special, printing checks on a specialized printer like that. That's interesting. I would try it with. Is the printer USB? It plugs into your computer using USB? Oh no, it is laser. Oh, no laser. Oh, it's a regular laser printer. Still talking with Paul about the check printing. Yeah, I would look at the different styles here and match up the one that um, would match the best. And then I usually print it out on a plain piece of paper and kind of hold it up next to the check stock and figure out what things need to move until I'm pretty happy with how accurate it is. And then to print a check, you go to File, Print Check for selection, and it'll actually print out the check if you have this configured. All right, yeah, I hope that helps. All right, well, that's good. We've gone hour and 15. That's great. I'm so glad so many people had questions, and I've been able to hopefully do the best I could answering them. I don't see any other questions, and so I think we should wrap it up. Um, Thanks again for attending, and you can send feedback to webinars@iggsoftware.com. If you have any recommendations for other webinars or just want to send some feedback, that's webinars@iggsoftware.com. CR, the last question from CR, our direct access provider is Yodlee. They're a company in Redwood City in California. They've been around for a long time in the data aggregation business. We are working on ways to improve like our quote downloads and stuff like that, but I don't have any specifics I can share about right now in Europe. If you want to send specifics of your requirements, CR, that would be great to hear. Send them to webinars@IGG Software, and like if you're looking to download security prices for specific securities, or if you're hoping to connect certain banks, please send that. That would be great. All right, thanks again for attending. I'm going to end it here, and have a good rest of your day, everybody. All right, bye-bye.